Professor A.N. Tripathi, former coordinator, Malvi Center for Ethics and Human Values, Malvi Mulya Anushilan Kendra, with us on the occasion of International Conference on a Spiritual Paradigm for Surmounting Global Management Crisis. So, Professor Tripathi, what is your experience at this conference, and what do you think about it?
This is the first day I have been there, but I have been here earlier also on a similar conference. I think it's a very good gathering. Theme chosen is very proper and very topical one. It needs to be discussed today in view of the different problems. Particularly it's important for India, because we are simultaneously faced with two worldviews, two cultural worldviews, two civilizations. One is modernity, which is basically Euro-centered idea of life and development and society. The other is our own Indian one, which is highly spiritual, in the sense that it takes a much more holistic approach. And therefore at this crossroad, we cannot abandon either. And therefore we have to find out a way of reconciling these. I feel one of the major problems today amongst Indians and in India is this difficulty in coping with the inherent conflicts and contradictions of these two cultural paradigms. And therefore it's good that we talk about it here.
And this conflict is also there, like when we are talking about management education, which we basically prepare people for corporate and industrial world. And there the entire scenario is different, the thought process is different, and we talk about spiritualism. So there is some inherent conflict, as you said. So how to go about it, overcoming it?
Let me first tell you that I am an engineering academics. I worked as a faculty member at IIT BHU for 40 years. I did all my academic work in electrical engineering, and therefore I very much realize that the difficulty of the mind frame which is oriented towards thinking in terms of technology, development, economics, material development, into the areas of ethics and human values. But then the need for it is being experienced there too, because they are the people, human persons. There are certain basic problems which are there in every human person, irrespective of what technology or what discipline he is. And therefore the inner tensions and conflicts and the search for a better way of life and a better way of being and a better way of relating with others is certainly a part of everyone's. The people in the professional life are more exposed to it because they have one advantage. In the materialistic sense, they are confident about the prospects. Their career prospects are assured. The moment he gets admission into IT, he is assured of that. But then he realizes life is not all that. Many very senior executives have taken voluntary retirement at an early age in this quest for life and quest for values. They say, is that all about it? I was reading recently a nice book by Guru Charan Das, one of the very top managers in the Procter & Gamble in India. And he's written a nice book, The Difficulty of Being Good. And he places the whole thing on the basis of Mahabharata. How ethical problems arise and how they are resolved, and what value it has, what insight it gives for resolving the modern day problems in management. And at the age of 50, he took retirement, because in his book he says, I started asking the question, is life all about increasing the sale of Horlicks 1 month per month, 1% per month? So that kind of question every thoughtful human person does ask. Of course, some people are satisfied with the material prosperity, material way of life, they don't raise. So these things would attract those. And there is a sizable number of young people who are asking these questions, because the fundamental existential problems are multiplying. The tensions, the difficulties of adjustment in family, in relationships, in academics, in organizations is tremendous.
So is there not a risk of being escapist? Because when there is a problem and pressure, then person moves to spirituality. So it's not about selling Horlicks or anything of that matter, and let's go back to our roots and let's not do anything of this sort?
Two aspects to it. Some people take it not this way, but the other one, they give up their career altogether and take to social work or some other way, because they find it individually, personally, a more rewarding and more meaningful life. Because in life you search not only for success, you also search for happiness. The search for happiness is perhaps greater than the search for success. And above that, the highest quest of human persons is search for meaning. So particularly those whose success is assured, who have had all the charms of success, and many such thinking people realize, well, life has more to offer than this. So it is not an escapist way. The second point is, even remaining in profession, in business. Guru Charan Das is a highly capitalist philosophy, a person with great leanings about it. That business, that market, that consumer has to be there. But there has to be done in such a way that it contributes to human betterment and social and human well-being, rather than being an enemy of it. So even those, there are so many successful organizations in India. In fact, it is, say, there was a recent survey about the 20 top successful companies in America, and then another one to find out the 20 most loved companies in America, and the list almost coincided. 18 of them were common to both. So the admiration you get, the appreciation you get for the good work you are doing, because society feels you are rendering a service which they need. They value that service, and therefore they give you rewards for it. So doing business, doing technology in a way that it serves human beings, it satisfies their needs, is certainly a better way of living and growing. And all these stable companies who are there for even in our country, like Tata's and other things, they're all value-based companies. Spirituality in the strictest sense does include ethics and human values, an essential part of it. Because spirituality to me is a concept of how you relate. The basic questions, like Professor Singh was raising the question, who am I? This is the first question in Upanishad. The whole of Upanishad philosophy rests on it. There's an interesting story when Shankaracharya went to his guru, travelled all the way to Madhya Pradesh, and then he knocked. And the usual question the guru asked, who are you? He said, I have come here to find answer to that. So that is one aspect. And the other aspect is the behavioral aspect. When you have understood
Sorry. Sir, Upanishad.
There is a tradition now, modern, very much common, that spirituality means renouncing the world, becoming a sannyasi, living in Himalayas. There is a small class of people who do that, and that they consider to be spiritual. But it is a spiritual attitude to life, to living, to working, to contributing, to building a society, and a spiritual way of being, what it means to be. So it is an attitudinal value, and when you operate from the spiritual including the moral and the ethical and the human in general, then the quality of life, the work you do, whatever work you do, the way you relate to people, the way you look upon your society and your fellow human beings, that changes. It is not escaping from that. In fact, in Indian tradition, that sannyas is not very much looked upon. It is, of course, there for some people, but that is...
Sannyas followed Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha, like you gradually...
That is sannyas in the literal sense of the Vanaprastha. That was a stage of life rather than a way of living. And in that concept of Varnashram Dharma, sannyas is the last stage of life. In the first stage you are a student, acquire knowledge, prepare yourself for the rest of the life. In Grihastha Ashram, the second one, you enter into life as it is, you contribute to economic well-being, social well-being, you enjoy the pleasures, you raise a family, you fulfill your obligations to the society, and then the next one, Vanaprastha, you start withdrawing. You hand over the reins of the household to your children, and then you live more for society than for yourself and your family. And then sannyas, you give up even residence. You become a wandering monk. But by attitude, you can live in house and yet be sannyasi. You are not attached to anything. The pains and pleasures do not affect you. But even for a sannyasi, his to be nishkriya, not do anything, is certainly not permissible. That's the whole philosophy of Gita.
Sannyasi also has duties.
Sannyasi has the duties to work for the whole of humanity. Loka sangra is a very potent concept. Even Sri Krishna says, I do not have any need for doing any work, but yet I do continuous work for Loka sangra, for preservation of the world order, for preservation of good, for the preservation of the social order. So escaping from those activities, that taking to the sannyas is not, to my mind, it is, of course, the aberrations are there, interpretations are there, is not.
But they cannot be taken as model.
No, they cannot be taken. Listen, they are certainly, as a professional, I have been a teacher and I am educating professionals. I am not educating them to become sannyasis.
Okay. And through the Center of Ethics and Human Enrichment and Values, so you interacted with the corporate, and what kind of services or the facilitated, what way you facilitated the organization through your center?
Mainly our work was concentrated on the students and teachers of the university. It started with the Institute of Technology, where I developed a course on human values for engineering students. I taught for 20 years, and fortunately that course is being followed by many other universities. And then a center was created for the universities, that is to look after and propagate it amongst non-IT students. We used to organize workshops and discussion sessions on themes like this. Then, of course, the teachers joined in, and we had separate programs with them. And the programs for corporate sector, which we are now conducting, is an offshoot of it. It was not our motive. So some of the students, their parents said, hey, you do this, and they say,
it's like a farmer, like who produces surplus and
then it sells to the market. In your terminology, yes, that would be. And we do sell it, because we found that they pay much more for such activities. So in fact, the center was run on the basis of earnings which we get from corporate.
So there's a possibility that SMS can take you from your office.
Sure, certainly.
And your guidance would be there for this.
Oh yes, I'm open to. Propagating ethics and human values is my mission of life.
So I think like the challenges that I was thinking since morning was to implement, how to implement this program in curriculum format, because it's very, very subjective thing and very, very person dependent as far as spirituality is concerned. So making a standard and which suits everybody and can be taught and can, if possible, be evaluated in one way or the other. Not necessarily the traditional evaluation, but some way to evaluate whether you have reached a certain level. Because even gurus used to evaluate their students. So is there a possibility of that sort?
I do not have much admiration for the kind of gurus I see around. See, if it is to be done in an academic institution, it has to have a sound conceptual framework. It cannot be merely a set of preachings, upadesh, do this, or saying...
They are for ages.
What?
Such upadesh have been...
I have been there. I mean, say quoting from Gita, Gita says this, Gita says this, that doesn't cut any ice. You have to develop a conceptual work for a rational presentation of it, which does not call for any specific belief system. And then present it to the students as a way of living and making you a better human person and contributing to the richness of your life. So it's a process of human enrichment.
And one cannot evaluate the other person's spirituality quotient. I think that's it.
I think there are certain things which are qualitative to the extent that quantitative comparisons are not very meaningful. How much happiness I derive in life or from an act is something which I think. See, everything need not be qualitative. I mean, life is quantitative.
To quantify everything, we should abandon that.
That is the curse of what we suppose to be the scientific attitude to life and the scientific temper in general. That which is not quantifiable is not scientific. I think this is an absolutely limited understanding of even science. So this was prevalent sometimes back. This is called the age of scientism. I mean, the idea of scientism is that anything which is worthwhile learning can be learned through science only. Now, life is not We don't live life by formulas of Newton or Einstein. We live life by values, by our convictions, by understandings, by our own aspirations. These are not quantical.
Had there been a similar case, then there would be any mutations or any such thing which happen in nature. You have mutants.
I mean, the natural life, of course, again you are going back to the natural life, material life, natural life and human life. These are, to my mind, three different orders of things. And using concepts of one to explain another, like using concepts of I'm a scientist by training. I have taught engineering and science for all my life. Those are applicable there. Don't generalize them to say that life can be defined scientifically. In fact, I wrote a book on human values which is now becoming quite popular. And one of the persons who complimented me in a public lecture says, his book is highly scientific. I did not feel complimented.
I think you felt like Kabir.
Could be. Kabir is of course.
Because Kabir said कि ईटा पत्थर जोड़ के मस्जिद लाई बनाए और अब कबीर के मठ में भी स्पीकर लगे होते हैं.
That's true. I mean that perceptual understanding has, and as I was telling my friend other way, it is not what you say. That's of course important. A clear conceptual framework which is not based on any dogma. No, acceptance of any value or any attitude of life is a very personal matter. Give him only a framework where he can reasonably, intellectually choose his life view and world view. I mean, nowadays...
put fish to water and let it swim.
First, make the swim realize how to swim. We are churning out people, I mean, engineering, education, all that, just to make money and succeed in career life. We are not turning them out how to become good human beings, how to live a good life, a wider life, enjoy life in its larger dimensions rather than only its material ones. That has to be, that's the task of education. I mean, the Malviya ji established this university precisely for that purpose, for man-making education, for developing people with integrity, character, love for humanity, love for their country, who are ready to fulfill their social obligations. Now that education unfortunately has not been pursued. You cannot educate somebody unless you have a clear experience, empirical experience of doing it. Now, knowing mathematics is one thing, but how to teach mathematics is not a problem.
I was saying something, he speaks so loudly that I couldn't understand.
Yeah, because the second point is that who talks, who delivers these courses, the authenticity of that person. That is authenticity in the sense that whatever he is saying, he is convinced, and he believes. And let's say conviction, because belief is a, he tries to live by that. Practices. Succeeds or not is not a question. He tries to live by it.
So real challenge is finding the trainer, the right trainer.
Very much rightly, you have just put the hub on it. The course I was teaching in human values, there was a debate in class, and some people made a suggestion that it should be made compulsory. I said, okay, let's debate. Your engineers, think of it. And then gradually it evolved that the majority said no, because you will have to have many A.N. Tripathis to teach it. It was of course highly complimentary to me, I felt happy. But that's the problem. It is because each person will have to conceptualize it and present it in a convincing manner. You can't convince people unless you are yourself convinced. And you cannot do it that convincingly unless you practice it. And I certainly think... But
it is true for teaching profession as such, because teaching is not a job as such.
If you take teaching in that sense, if you take teaching as imparting information, providing skills and efficiency for making a success in career and material prosperity, of doing the socially defined job for you, fitting into a slot, well then the education is going on.
There are very few professions in which you have Sahab attached to it. And this is one such profession.
True. The idealism, particularly in Indian tradition, the teachers have always been looked upon as the people who would guide society, who would provide inspiration, and that's why the students were sent to Gurukulas. because they wanted them to prepare them for life. So times have changed now, but now also that idealism has to be there.
Thank you, Professor Tripathi. Your views have been very enlightening, and we are very happy, and I hope that you'll be giving us your wisdom in times to come and guide us further. Thank you, sir.